From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Welcome back to On the Corner of Main Street. I'm here, beautiful sunny day here. Gary, jump right in. Tell us who we got here today.
Yeah, well, we're excited because joining us today is the president of the Fremont Street Experience. With a career that spans entertainment, media, and innovation, he's played a major role in redefining the heart of downtown Las Vegas. As head of one of the city's most iconic destinations, just steps away from the plaza, he brings a unique perspective of how to blend history, spectacle, and community. Welcome, Andrew Simon on the corner of Main Street.
Thank you for that. I once listened to Howard Stern, and they had these introductions that were ridiculous, and they made fun. But that's a very kind intro, so I appreciate that.
That's what Gary's famous for, is his introduction. He does a wonderful introduction whenever.
Yeah, every now and again I botch him. Yeah, so
that's okay. We're good with it. I'm used to it now.
The power of editing, which you know a lot about, which I'm sure we'll get into.
We're not editing anything.
Okay.
We'll see. Anyway, welcome, Andrew, to you just walked down the street from your office at Fremont Street Experience.
I did. It's an amazing walk, and I get here, and I love the plaza. I really think you guys have done a spectacular job over here watching everything that's gone up front, so congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. And in fact, that's a controversial place to start because Scott Robin thinks none of us like each other, that all of us on Fremont Street don't like each other, but there we go. We're all friends. We all promote each other. We all speak nice to each other. So thank you very much for your kind words and for supporting us. I appreciate that.
What does Scott know? I mean, he thinks he knows everything. He doesn't know everything.
There we go.
We're going to clip that piece and make sure we put that out there.
So before we just got online or whatever this is called, before we went live, you were just explaining to us that you actually were at the Mirage in the 90s?
Yeah, so my first job out of college, I came from New York, and I was recruited to be in the MAP program over at the Mirage, which is a management associate program that kind of, I think, still exists today within the MGM Corporation.
I think they actually do it at the Wynn. I remember someone did it at the Wynn, which is great, by the way. I think it's amazing that they do that at these big companies to give people insight into how they work.
Yeah, and they do these things at the time. It was trying to figure out how do you get kids who went to college to get into the gaming industry. At the time in the 90s, there wasn't a ton of, college education in gaming. And so Steve Wynn at the time was trying to recruit people from UNLV and Cornell primarily to come out here, go into the industry. So you had the choice to go into housekeeping, PR, into operations, or gaming. And most of my friends, we all took the gaming route because, number one, it paid twice as much. And a lot of us had debt from school. So we learned to deal blackjack, baccarat, roulette. Half of us came to the Golden Nugget. The other half learned blackjack at the Mirage.
So you went to school here in Las Vegas?
I did back in New York.
Okay.
I went to college in New York, came out here, and like I said, at 21 years old, was living over in Green Valley. There were no 215 freeway. There was no way to get there other than Warm Springs or Sunset to the Strip and then make a right.
Amazing.
And so again, I learned blackjack on swing shift. I dealt baccarat, roulette, floor supervisor when Treasure Island opened, and been here ever since.
That's incredible. So you were at the Mirage with Barry Shearer, who was one of our more recent guests here. What was it like working under the legends of this town? I mean, you learned from Steve Wynn, Barry Shearer, and Mark Shaw, the three names you just mentioned before we started. What was it like working there?
It was a very different time, as you well know. Everybody in the city kind of knew each other, and I was 21. I remember Seth Shore came a year, I think, after, who ended up with Downtown Grand and is still around. I remember he came a year after me, I believe, or 2 years into Treasure Island or the Mirage. Everybody knew each other. It was a different environment, but it was so exciting. At the time, the volcano was there, the first time of something different on the Strip, which eventually led to Treasure Island, and I think they learned their lessons. They'll be the first. Steve Wynn will tell you. They did not want to have people involved after that, right? The volcano did not have workman's comp insurance, people getting injured, people eating food, people getting complained, healthcare benefits.
You're talking about the pirate show. The pirate show
up front. Yeah. That's why when Bellagio eventually got built, you had nice fountains that went back and forth. The people aspect of that Treasure Island show was always so difficult. But I think, going back to your original question, having an environment at the time of innovation, I think Steve had tried to do something completely different and change the world with junk bonds coming from Michael Milken to really go for it and do something completely different that Las Vegas had never seen. And so to be a part of that was real special at the time.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned the fountains, the pirate show, and the volcano. It's amazing to me that people build these amazing resorts today and don't have something like that. You know, Derek, to his credit, the sports book is almost like the volcano or the pirate show. It's a must-see attraction that people have to go see. But so much of the new places today, they don't have those things out front. They have a Walgreens or a CVS, but in all seriousness, they don't think like that, and yet it's proven that it worked.
It was a creative vision, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, again, Steve was extraordinary and coming up with things that people didn't see. I remember going to the first Cirque du Soleil show called the Nouvelle Experience that was in a tent behind the Mirage back then. It was the first time he was experimenting, and people thought he was crazy. We'd get free tickets. Taxi cab drivers were getting free tickets every night to bring people and tell them about it. And then you look, I mean, Cirque might have recent problems, but the longevity of that show and that really came from Steve's vision, once again, of something different for the city.
It's a very interesting point. Now, if you're watching this or you're listening to this, you might recognize Andrew, his voice or his likeness. He's a very big TV star. Before we jump into Fremont Street, you were the star of Undercover Boss.
I did Undercover Boss here on Fremont Street.
What year was that?
You know, I think it aired in 2022. It was filmed right during COVID, in the middle of COVID, in the summer, I believe, of 2021. And it was about 116 degrees for all 7 days of the shoot over here. And I got the call maybe 2 months into the job on Fremont Street. And kind of a funny story, because Jonathan, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, said, Andrew, you know, you haven't done my podcast. I asked you 5 times. And I'm like, I don't remember this, Jonathan. I think you're making that up. But then I thought about it, and it was like, it's quite possible when you do that show, you aren't able to do any media. You're not allowed to talk to anybody, so people don't know your voice, they don't know your face, and you can't do anything without their permission. So Scott also from Vital Vegas at the time kept asking me to do this podcast and thought I was a real jerk, right? He's like, this new guy won't talk to me. But I had signed a multi-million-dollar release that I won't do any media, won't talk to anybody as they're doing that show.
What was that experience like? Because you seem like a guy who probably gets into the details and the weeds of his business anyway. But what was the experience like pretending to be somebody else on Fremont Street Experience?
You know, I think I know a lot of people think it's staged. It wasn't. I had no idea who I was working with. They had no idea it was happening. I always knew the jobs were hard. And I think that's a little bit different than other people. When I've watched the shows, right, the CEO is like, oh my God, I had no idea how hard these people work. Listen, anybody who comes to Fremont Street knows our custodial staff has to work hard with 22 million people a year, spilling things and dropping things. And you have people on our zip line every day, and they're putting 25-pound trolleys over their head and hooking people up. I knew the jobs were hard. I didn't expect to be doing it for 7 days straight in 115 to 120 degree heat. It was a good 16-hour shoot on some days out here. But learning about the stories of some of our people, because I purposely removed myself a little bit from that when I started. Normally when I come into a job, I'll do CEO roundtable, sit with people. What could we do better? What are we doing well? Where are areas for improvement? And for my first 6 months, I really didn't do it. So people didn't know my name or voice, especially in the nighttime hours, because I had a feeling we'd be shooting a lot overnight. You really learned a lot about people's lives, of what they go through. Again, I didn't grow up with much. I've worked in horrible jobs. I've worked in good jobs. So I had a lot of compassion and had been there myself. I took the bus to work. One of the things we do on Fremont Street, everybody gets a free bus pass. When I came on board, we were supporting like 30%. And I'm like, well, if somebody worked hard enough to get here on a bus, we could pay for their whole bus pass, not like Marshall. There's just little things that you do for people as you look. And I found a lot of things that we weren't doing well on the show. And again, I don't want to spoil it if anybody goes on Hulu or Paramount Plus and wants to watch it. But we did change some people's lives with money, with other pieces. But more importantly, we improved a lot of processes on Fremont Street where we were doing things wrong. And I was like, we could do that better. But, you know, for example, you had to carry 50 to 100 pounds of harnesses down a staircase that goes back and forth in trolleys. We built an elevator at End Landing. I did it for a day, and I'm like, there's a better way to do this. And our engineering team figured that out. I was cleaning gum off the mall, and one of my people was like, there are gum machines like Ghostbusters where you can do this. And I'm like, well, why haven't we bought these? And well, I brought up the idea. We had gum machines weeks later. You just learn so many things very quickly when you do those jobs that they might not tell their boss. And again, the hard part is when their bosses go, well, why didn't they tell me that? And that's a question. Why didn't they tell you that?
It's such a great. I'm proud of you for doing it. It's an amazing thing to do, and it's even if you did it for a TV show, the fact that you still able to learn those things and change people's lives and your team members' lives, it's something we talk about all the time. That I wish we could. We just have the luxury of. Although that's an excuse, I shouldn't say that, but I would love to make it so that before you become a manager here, you have to either work the front desk or the players club.
Yeah.
Because you learn so much about the customer and the experience and what the team's going through prior to understanding how to run a business is working those things. It's the same way as at Zappos. Tony Shea used to tell me you couldn't work at Zappos unless you did 2 weeks, or maybe it was a month, maybe it was 2 months. I don't remember the exact time period, but it was a time period in the call center. Because by working in the call center, you got all the training, understood all the business angles of it and the elements and the culture. And it's great that you did that and experienced that.
Yeah, and Steve Wynn, again, I don't mean to bring up Steve over and over, but again, when you worked at the Mirage, we did have to deal blackjack over for I think it was 8 months that we were dealing blackjack, baccarat, roulette. We gave up our tips so everybody didn't hate our guts, basically. We gave all our tips to the dealers. That way they didn't hate the 21-year-old who got to break in at the Mirage. And so we did all those things. And by doing that, you have an appreciation, right, that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah. And just so you know, you can bring up Steve Wynn as many times as you want. He's the best to ever do it. And for many people, this city wouldn't exist the way it does. Yeah. But for him, irrespective of his last 10 years and whatever happened,
sure.
As a businessman, as a visionary, there's no one. And understanding what people want.
Yeah.
There's no one better than him in terms of the way he did it. So we can talk about it as much as you want. But we won't, because you are the president of the Fremont Street Experience. Now, I challenged Gary with doing research on Fremont Street, but before he espouses his knowledge, I understand Fremont Street was the first paved road in the history of Las Vegas.
That's correct.
What can you tell people about Fremont Street before 1995 when the Canopy was built? What was it? How did it come to be? And what are its origins within the city? If you want. Otherwise, Gary can go through. But I bet you know more.
I'll fact check you.
Well, you
I got a couple
can,
notes here,
again, there are better historians than me. But again, I got asked to do a French documentary the other day on the history of Fremont Street. And I'm like, there are better people. And my French is terrible. But I gave it my best shot. But again, I think if you take a look back, and I moved here in 1992, I had the choice to deal blackjack at the Golden Nugget or at the Mirage. I chose the Mirage for a reason. It was not great down here. Right. My friends did deal craps over at the Golden Nugget, some of my best friends today, and they did that, and it was great to have a $1.99 steak and egg special at the Nugget. But other than that, coming down here was not pleasant.
You're talking in 1992.
1992. And during that time period, it was in need of some major investment and change, and I know Barry Shear they spoke to it far better than I will on a previous podcast. But again, I think if you take a look at the time, Steve Wynn, I know, was thinking of the gondola rides, and then they had a sky parade that they had pitched, and all these different ideas ultimately coming up at the Canopy. But in that time period, in 1995, there was really, and you go through these cycles in every downtown in America where there's blight downtown and different issues, and I think at that point in time, there was a serious need for reinvestment downtown. And I think the casino owners at the time came together and really pitched in their resources along with the city to say, what can we do to make this place better? And coming up with that Canopy was a big change. And again, there's always going to be issues on Fremont Street in that we are a public street. We are a unique environment compared to anywhere else in the world. But that also attracts a lot of people here because it is kind of a wild place.
Right.
We attract 20 to 25 million people a year. And I think we're the second busiest street in America after Times Square in New York City. And part of it is just all the energy that comes and all these casino owners that came together to provide free entertainment, whether it be on the Canopy, whether it be on the stages. We put on, I always say we're the best and #1 free concert series in America. Because I don't know anybody else who's spending, $10 million a year on free entertainment and concerts that we get no money out of. Fremont Street spends that money. We do not earn a dollar from anybody going to these concerts for 364 days a year, except on New Year's Eve. And on New Year's Eve, we actually lose money. We don't make money on that either.
Wow.
Our whole goal is to drive tourism to Fremont Street. And so going back to 1905, 1906 to a land auction, if you want to go that far back, it all started back then, right? And you had the Hotel Nevada that opened. You have the first telephone that's ever been hotel number one for Nevada was over there.
That was the Golden Gate, yep.
Yeah, the Golden Gate. And all those pieces, then you went through gaming and then no gaming and no prohibition and all these pieces. But I think you have it right that 1995 kind of changed it all when everybody said enough is enough. We're going to invest in downtown. We're not going to lose to the Strip. And nearly 52% of people that come to the Strip come downtown now. And that's a number we're always trying to go after. To your point about Scott before, thinking if we don't like each other, there's a misconception we don't like the Las Vegas Strip. That'd be incredibly silly because the Strip has 14 times the number of rooms probably than downtown Las Vegas. So if we're getting 52% of the people that come to the Strip, we only have, and Jonathan knows it probably better than me, 10,000 rooms downtown, 8,800?
Ish. Yep.
Yeah. And so again, if they have 100,000 rooms over there, we want every one of them to come here. So we are very thankful the Strip has those rooms and provides the tourism base to come downtown.
I agree with what you just said, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a second of more of my understanding of how it came to be. But go on, Gary, tell us what happened in 1905 and why is it named Fremont Street?
So it was after a gentleman named John C. Fremont, who he was a politician and an explorer, and he was one of the first people that actually made a map of the western United States, including Nevada. But apparently John Fremont has never been to Las Vegas. So he never stepped foot in what we consider Las Vegas today. But we named it after him because he was the explorer that helped develop the map.
We might have to. Who was the historian? Bob Stodel. Bob Stodel and the governor that we had on the podcast. We might have to fact check some of this with them. But apparently that's why it's called Fremont Street after John Fremont.
That is correct.
And he's never been on this. He's never come to Vegas. Well, he never came to Vegas. He's
That's
not
right.
around.
That's right.
He actually ran for president in 1856.
That I did not know.
Yeah.
There you go.
I had no idea. But
None of us
know.
did.
That's what we're here to do.
So my understanding was, back in the day, there was only downtown Las Vegas in terms of attractions in the city. Before the Strip came to be what the Strip was, it was always about downtown. You could drive up and down it. You would come into the plaza and turn around, go back the other way, and that was the main attraction. And it wasn't until the late 80s and 90s that things started to decline down here and all the development on the Strip took place. And the way it was explained to me is some of the casino groups got together and went to Steve and said, Steve, we need a volcano.
Yeah.
And they wanted to create attraction. That's when Steve Wynn came up with a bunch of ideas. None of them were ever, and this actually, Steve Wynn told me the story, but none of them actually got approved. Yeah. And that's when he went and left downtown essentially. And they ended up going with his architect or designer, Jody.
That's correct.
Who built the Fremont Street Experience.
Yeah.
1995.
Yeah, and Steve, again, it was such an interesting time back then. Again, I'm trying to see how much I would divulge, but at the time, I dated somebody very close friends. I would travel to Sun Valley once in a while with Mr. Wynn and Elaine, and got to
you were in
see
the family
a little bit. No, I was never in the family by any means, but I got.
This might be the biggest scoop we got.
I got to see a little bit of a different side of the way they lived and things they did, and again, I was so young and watching all this development and what was going on in town, and again, just at the time also understanding how the Mirage got financed and how big a deal it was, and I even got to meet at the time Michael Milken way back.
Oh.
Who kind of explained to me a little bit how the Mirage got financed and how it came together, and learning the business background at a very young age was interesting to me, because again, I didn't grow up with much, and I was always very interested in people with money. But I just was like, how did they get all this money and how did they do it? And reading Business Week when I was 15 years old and trying to understand it all, and to see how the Mirage got financed was fascinating to me. It was junk bonds, and Michael Milken, who also had his problems, but he also built some of the biggest companies the globe has ever seen, and trying to understand a little bit how these companies took those risks and what they were able to do. And for Steve, the one story, again, I was told was how much money do you think you need for the Mirage? And Steve said a number, and then I believe Michael said, well, how much do you really need? And it was double that number. He goes, well, then that's what you should do. And that's how all that money, I believe, came to be for the Mirage. And that's why I think, again, and I don't know if it was $1 billion at the time. It was something extraordinary to build at the time, but obviously it was an immense success, and sad to see it go recently.
But I do think, back to our original conversation, that the hard rock design, that guitar in the center of the strip, I think it's going to do very well. I think it's going to do better than some of the newer developments that have taken place in the last decade, because I think they have a great database. But more importantly, I think that from what I've seen, I'm holding judgment up, but from what I've seen, they're building something that has not happened in the city before. It could be very interesting to see a guitar-shaped hotel. It's different.
Have you ever seen it down in Florida?
No.
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think it will do very well. Back to Fremont Street.
Yes.
I don't know if this is even relevant because the thing's been so wildly successful.
Yeah.
But I was told when it was built there was like a city fund in case they had to take it down at any point. Do you know?
I have never seen that.
It may not be true.
I don't know that to be true. We have a management agreement with the city and the original funding, but there was a bonds issued that had to be repaid back over time and all those pieces. But I never saw a takedown
like a
bond.
dismantling fund case.
I don't know of that. If that's true, that might be a Jan Jones question next time she's on the podcast.
What do you guys think Fremont Street would have been had they not developed that or taken that down? Or, if that went back to a traditional street, do you think there would have been...
No, I think downtown would have continued to decline. I think Fremont Street's... there's two parts to that question, right? Is Fremont Street optimal? Is it the best it could be? And obviously Andrew will have his own take on that. Yeah. My thought on Fremont Street, if you look at it back to when I first got out here, I think it was an attraction, but once people saw this show, they would leave. And it wasn't the fault of Fremont Street. It did its job of getting people there, but the neighborhood had nothing for people to stay and do. There weren't good restaurants, there weren't good bars, there weren't good hotels, there weren't good pools. Today you have all this development around Fremont Street. That means once you get those 20 to 22 million visitors that you're talking about, they can see this, the sights, the sounds, some of the craziness, and then figure out, hey, here's Oscar Steakhouse, here's Barry's, here's Andiamo, here's Hugo Cello, or go to one of the bars, or go to a live show, or whatever else is happening in the area. That wasn't in existence 15 years ago. So when they did it in 95, they probably realized very quickly that although people were coming down there, the whole neighborhood still had to be revitalized in order for it to be successful.
Yeah, and I think you could take a look at Atlantic City in some ways, right? And you have an attraction of a boardwalk and water. But I think, one of the stats that I threw out a year or two ago that was very interesting is that downtown Las Vegas is the only downtown America that has higher visitation than pre-pandemic. Every other city in America, the tourism is down, whether it's Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, you name any city in America pre-pandemic to today, every one of them pre-pandemic, their tourism was about 10 to 20% higher. Downtown Las Vegas is the only one up. And I do think a big part of it is Fremont Street and the surroundings, that we've spent so much energy and effort on marketing, tourism, and really, I came here in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, to work on Fremont Street. And you think about what's important to people. And again, Jonathan, we didn't know each other that well at the time, but I took the job, and I have a marketing background early in my career. And the first thing I said was, hey, what do I have to do to market this place? And the number one thing I said was, we have to work on safety. And public safety with any downtown is the number one thing we got to get going. And our previous mayor, Mayor Goodman, and I would meet and talk all the time about it. And we got the sheriff involved, who's now our governor. And we had the Las Vegas City Marshals, and we had the Metropolitan Police Department that both serve this area, which is different than almost any other city, that you have two police forces that overlap on a specific block. Yeah. And bringing everybody together to say we want to combat this problem was such an important part of the marketing message I wanted to put, was Fremont Street is safe, downtown is safe, this is the place you want to go if you want to have a great time, and working on that. And probably the biggest accomplishment, again, long after I'm gone from this job or whatever else, but we put a police station on Fremont Street, a 9,000 square foot police station that Fremont Street owned that property and land. And we I don't want to say gave it away. We leased it at, 20% of the going rate to bring police to this area and put our security the Metropolitan Police Department and the Las Vegas City Marshals under one roof have a 24-hour staff police station by the Metropolitan Police Department, have the marshals bought in, have the police bought in, have the mayor bought in, have the now governor bought in, have the new sheriff that was coming in bought in, and we all met. And if you take a look at the results for downtown, the crime statistics are unbelievable. At one point, I think violent crime was down 88%. This year, down another 30% from the down 88. Everything we have done has worked to reduce crime in a downtown area that you don't really see anywhere else in America like you do here in Las Vegas.
Yeah. I see what you did there. You took credit.
No.
Or you took, hold on, from 2020, we outperformed every downtown in America, and it also coincided with you joining.
Well, I don't want to brag about that.
I see what you, very
impressive. I will say, and again, all things, our mayor, I love as much as, I'm sitting here at Oscars, but, obviously Carolyn and Oscar are beloved for Las Vegas, but Mayor Goodman stepped in to make this happen. This would not have happened, but she knew that I wasn't going to be happy going, come to this place and you don't feel comfortable. I needed the support of our politicians. And you happen to have a sheriff that was then going to become governor to then tell the new sheriff to then tell, everybody had to buy in because, again, at the time, during COVID, it was getting a little sloppy, and we did not want that to be what downtown was.
Well, I give you huge credit because there was a moment during the pandemic or the months after COVID where there was a couple of shootings and some real problems, and the way you guys have stepped up and cleaned it up, and whoever came up with that police terminal on Fremont Street is genius because it's clearly made a big improvement. And there's no question that when I came to town in 2007, the biggest issue facing downtown was the perception of security and safety. And you had to change it, and you guys have done a good job there. I think everyone, again, through process of regeneration and investment, has done a good job. The other one that's often, and I talk to people on the Strip all the time, and I hear them, oh, downtown's this or it's that. And then when they get down, you're like, oh, wow, this is great. This is nice. I didn't know you had this. I didn't know you had that. So it's just a perception issue in many ways. The other one was parking. I always heard people complaining about parking, and I feel like that's an area where the city could definitely improve as well to help people to come downtown in greater numbers is by fixing that. But safety and parking were definitely two things that when I first moved here were the two hot things, and for certain on safety, you guys have done a great job on that.
Yeah, and again, the key part is the Las Vegas City Marshals and the Metropolitan Police Department. I think they have come together to work together so much better than 5-10 years ago that, I just walked up the street now and they have these teams of marshals and Metro walking the street together. That did not happen 5 years ago. They are together patrolling, policing. We also have 80 of our own security guards policing this neighborhood to make sure that tourism can grow and be safe here because, again, nothing happens if people feel unsafe. And to me, that was the number one priority. Again, marketing, you can spend as much as you want, but if people come and the experience doesn't match it, it doesn't matter.
That's exactly right. I tell everyone the same thing. Don't market something you're not proud of.
No.
Because once they get there, if they're not going to talk about it or come back. Right, Sarah? I talk about that all the time. Hey, you've got to give people a good experience that they talk about and become your marketing budget.
And they'll complain. Listen, we put on a free concert series that we spend millions and people go, I'm not coming. I hate that band. I'm like, really? It's free. Like, why do you need to express this opinion? And people will tell you what they feel, right?
So on the buskers,
yes.
What is so they have the circles that they can perform in. What do they need in order to reserve that circle? I've always kind of wondered that. Is there a permit or something that they apply for?
Again, for those out there, busker is a street performer, and we are a public street. And so way back there were, the city and the ACLU came to a decision on that they would provide 38 circles throughout the mall where street performers can perform. And those hours are between 3 p.m. and 1 a.m. What's a misconstrued piece out there, the Fremont Street Experience doesn't control the circles. The city holds a lottery every night on who gets those circles the next day. It has nothing to do with Fremont Street. Oh, wow. It's run by the city. And so a street performer gets a circle for 2 hours between 3 p.m. and 1 a.m. Prior to 3 p.m., in theory, they don't need to be in the circle. But 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. are the key hours where people might make money and tips in those circles. And
if they're not standing in the circle, then the security can tell them you got to go in the circle.
And or you need to leave, that you're, violating. that and the city marshals. What happens, again, there are 38 circles, and it's just, again, I'll be careful. It's just difficult we don't have 38 security guards to stand by 38 circles to see. And to be fair, there are some amazing street performers and there's some that aren't. And, it adds issues sometimes in some days because they'll test the limits and so again, that's one area.
Is it like, so I never knew all of this, but so let's say you booked it from 3 till 5. Does the next street performer come and say, excuse me, this is my circle,
Correct.
now you have to leave?
And if it's unclaimed, then there's, people waiting for circles and there's maybe trading of circles and other things that go on. And so the city is always looking and we're trying to figure out how to make it better. Where it could be better but gets prohibited, we would love for an ID system to be out there, but the ACLU will say that is not appropriate. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but apparently you would have the right to perform. You don't have to give your name so there's a lot of issues out there because every day we'll receive letters from people. You should do this, and it's like, well, we can't do that, or you should do X, and well, that's illegal.
Well, I'll say the things you probably can't though.
Well, I was just going to ask, do the performers pay to be into the lottery?
All free.
Okay.
And so they're registered performers. You have to register with the city, but you don't have to give a name, an ID, a likeness, or anything. So there's fake emails. Currently, because I was at a meeting yesterday, I believe there's 1,700 registered street performers.
Wow.
In their system. We believe there's probably maybe 100, 120 that have
I was
17
under
to
the
30
impression
names.
that-
And then, some of them might file for multiple and then try to make money on the circles and other pieces. It's a flawed system that we would all like to see improved. There's challenges with doing that. And again, at the end of the day, it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to deal with. And again, the Las Vegas City Marshals, our team, we deal with quite a few incidents that happen once in a while in those areas.
Well, I was under the impression that they had to give their ID or a name because there were some issues with not knowing if a criminal was dressed in a Mario suit taking a picture with your kid, right? For example, like that, to me, seems like an obvious issue. But anyway, certainly could be better. And you know what? When we did the Neon City Festival, there was like a permit that didn't allow them in there for those 3 days.
That's
if I'm not
correct.
mistaken.
A special event permit.
And I remember commenting on one of the meetings or with some of the other owners on the street, what a nice atmosphere was out on the street, not to hate the buskers, but it really felt good out there for those 3 days.
Yeah.
And I think subconsciously there wasn't any of the busking element out there that for those 3 days that the festival was going on.
Yeah, and when a special event permit's given, it's always given for the safety of tourism and other pieces. What happens, for St. Patrick's Day, for example, we have 40 to 60,000 people here on a given day, and the street performers might have circles that go wider and wider, and people are standing in the street, and a car comes by and somebody gets hit. You want to have public safety be the number one piece with a special event permit. And again, on Neon City Festival, New Year's Eve, there are certain days that it just makes sense to pull a permit like that. And again, the city has been supportive of that.
Did you take one for St. Patrick's Day?
We did have one for St. Patrick's.
This year, or you do it every year?
This was the first time.
Oh.
I did it this past week. It was a 3-day permit. And again, it led to a week where public safety was number one priority, and it worked out great. And again, you're always balancing those pieces because, again, some people will get upset with public safety issues. And, what's good for 98% of the time, some people will complain, some people are happy, some people aren't happy. But again, I sit here every day with our number one priority is tourism, safety of people who come to Fremont Street. And again, making it an environment that's like no other. What I've learned, and you probably have it, I have friends that sometimes have a perception maybe of Fremont, and they always went to the Strip, and they'll come downtown because I'm here now, and they're like, oh my God, this is fun. A great time, and all the pieces, whether it's Mob Museum, whether it's taking the zip line, coming to Oscars, going to the Arts District, running around. They just didn't know what was going on down here. And then you look at some of the properties like Derek built with Circa. It's just a spectacular. The Legacy Club it's like going to Japan and having one of the greatest views all over of
Especially
city.
on Friday nights with fireworks.
Yeah, especially to see the brand new fireworks come in. And when does the fireworks start again? Here.
First week of May.
First week of May.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, again, these pieces that are downtowns are taken for granted sometimes. But the fact that 52 to 54% of the people that go to the Strip come here, the word's getting out. And again, I know the LVCVA came out with their most recent tourism study, and it was saying that 54%, I believe, come downtown to see the Fremont Street Experience. And so, to your point of, hey, in 1995, we built this thing. Is it still worth it? What would have happened? More than half the people that do come downtown say they came to see the Fremont Street Experience. So for us, what we're kind of working on now is, what is the Fremont Street Experience, and what does that mean to somebody, and what does it mean to come downtown? Is it to come to old school charm, vintage, affordable, and try to change that vision of when people come down here, what are they getting? And that's kind of what we're working on.
These are actual conversations you're having.
That we're working as
board meetings?
we are close, to thinking about new marketing strategies of what we want a brand downtown. And we're kind of talking, should we do campaigns that are a little more, I don't even want to say inclusive, but when you come downtown, here's that 3-day itinerary like you see on Instagram of day 1, you go to the Fremont Street Experience, nighttime, go to the Mom Museum, day 2, eat at Oscars, then go to, Latai,
Yeah,
or whatever.
right.
Kind of set people's itineraries that maybe aren't just exclusive to FSC, but what should you do when you come downtown? And I'm on the Downtown Vegas Alliance and other things like that, but FSC does have an oversized voice for downtown, and I think, we're going to try to use that a little bit more to kind of drive tourism here, because that is our job. We're kind of an unofficial marketing organization for downtown in some ways. And again, what people don't really know, and our board of directors sometimes doesn't get enough credit, they've never taken a dividend out of the company ever since we were formed. And so 30 years, they've never once said, hey, we made $5 million this year, let's each take $1 million, or let's take $500,000. Every dollar we've ever made goes back into the street, into more music, more entertainment, more investment, and they've never, ever taken a dividend. I don't know many businesses like that are
Right.
truly vested in driving tourism downtown.
And when you say made money, because you said earlier you don't make money, you don't charge it, but you're talking about the zip line, that's how it makes money.
Yeah, so we have a few businesses downtown. We have the zip line. We have a leasing business of those kiosks on the mall. We lease the Walgreens, iHeart Music. We have a parking garage. So when you talk about parking, we have thousands plus parking spots at the big red garage over there on 4th and Carson. And so we also are looking at different sponsorships and different pieces of, for our future, because again, we're kind of a strange business in that
You
every
don't
dollar.
lease to the fake cannabis companies, do you?
We don't. That is not us.
Not you
And I
guys,
do
okay.
know who does that.
Okay.
And I like them. I don't like their tenants. Typically.
You are so good at this, so diplomatic.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, the fake cannabis. It's such an odd thing because I was at a meeting at City Hall the other day. You kind of go, whoever would have thought that we're dealing with customer complaints that I didn't get high from the weed I bought, and we're trying to make sure they can get high because they bought fake weed. And then I watch my live PD or OP Nation, and people are getting arrested for weed in another part of the country. And here we're trying to ensure that people could get real weed. And the world is very strange. And
Sure is.
yeah, and I'll just say it as a public service, you cannot sell marijuana on Fremont Street Experience. You cannot buy anything with THC over 0.3%. It's a fraud. They have a sign in the window, but it's a very, very small sign. And then sometimes they'll say, oh, well, you'll still get messed up from this. You're not. It is fake. Do not buy it if you're looking to get high. I know they have a security guard up front. I know they have jars, and it makes it look good. And they say they have edibles and other things. It's all fake. It is.
It's CBD. It's not
It is CBD,
It's not THC.
under
Yeah.
0.3%
Yeah.
THC. You are not allowed to sell marijuana anywhere on Fremont Street Experience. And off the top of my head, 2,000 feet or 1,500 feet near Fremont Street.
Correct.
So, again, it is not happening. Do not buy it if you're looking for real weed.
So great. So you said a couple of things I just want to touch on. I'm sure Gary has an agenda, but this is great.
Sure.
I'm having fun here. You mentioned St. Patrick's Day. I always tell people that in my perspective, St. Patrick's Day is the busiest day on Fremont Street I don't think it felt like it this year, but generally, because it was on a Monday as well. Generally, what do you, when you say the busiest day on Fremont Street of the
Yes.
year, what is it?
It's St. Patrick's Day, Halloween,
Yeah.
are probably the two biggest. And this year, St. Patrick's Day was up. Underneath the canopy over the 4-day period, it was up 13% versus last year. Last year, there was a little rain, I believe, on one of the days.
This year was heavy rain on Monday.
Well, that was at night.
Yes.
Yeah, later in the night in the
Yeah.
wind. And so we get data, it's called placer data on the number of bodies and people. It tracks cell phone data.
What is placer data? It's
So,
like
so
AI?
basically, it's a reporting mechanism to tell us how many cell phone unique users were on Fremont Street Experience on that given day.
Wow.
And so I can track now. Could it have a margin of error of 3 to 5%? Maybe, but it's apples to apples year over year. And I've tested it to say a known ticketed event that they ticket 5,000 at the event center. I can track the event center with this technology to go, okay, I can tell you how many people in theory are at the plaza today looking at this data. And so we kind of use that to go, was a concert successful? And it doesn't tell any personal information. It just tells us how many unique users were in an area at a given time. And so it helps us to go, okay, did this year's entertainment work? If we have a concert on the same Saturday of Memorial Day, and one year it has 16,000 at the stage and one year 10, you go, okay, maybe that didn't work out as well. And so we're able to use that because we are a public street. We're not ticketed, so it gives us a pretty good gauge. And so again, this year, St. Patrick's Day happened to be a pretty big hit. And it was a huge success. I'm talking to our board.
Oh, good. Okay.
How about over here? Now let's get to some. How was it? It was at the plaza.
It was good. We were a little slow on the Monday than we thought we would be, but I think a lot of that came from the rain and the wind, especially. Our pink box was down over last year, and pink box is a good gauge for visitation for the building because pink.
Is that the most profitable 500, 600 square feet of any?
I think it might
of any food establishment in the United States of America.
They'll probably kill me, but I think it might be.
I think it is.
Saying
From what
pretty
I've
amazing.
heard from our friends at Siegel and what's their company called again today? The
Bagel
brand?
Mania?
No, the
Siegel,
brand.
Siegel,
It's
Siegel Sweets?
amazing, or no, it's something.
Oh, Amazing Brands?
Amazing Brands, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. But
Yes.
yeah, they've done exceptionally well with that. I mean,
They have. That was a risky move on our part, where we were like, okay, I knew I wanted to put something dessert-ish in that
Get a
corner.
percent of the revenue, or is that how
We
that
do.
works?
Yeah, we do.
Well, look at that smile over there.
It's
the camera's
a very
picking
good
that
deal.
for you. Oh my lord!
I
Look
can't
at
stop
that
smiling
smile.
now.
Wow, Dimple is
I
all
love-
coming out right now.
The thing I love more is when I hear the other casinos on Fremont Street saying the number one box they see in downtown on Fremont Street is these pink boxes walking up and down
It's
Fremont
true.
Street. It's pretty amazing what they've done, and it's a great brand, and they're great operators. And by the way, they're great donuts. I mean, I had a couple this morning, and they're very, very good donuts. So
Go.
can't
Sponsored
complain.
by Pink Box.
Yes, yeah.
right.
Although we talk about everyone on
great.
this, we talk about everyone on this podcast.
They're great.
But March has been very good for us. March has been a very good month for us so far. March Madness was great for us. So overall, we're trending in the right direction. And we always know that we're a function of the wider city and then a function of downtown. And so it's great that you're saying it was busy, because then that correlates to what we're seeing. And we certainly rely on the impact of Fremont Street for a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you was, for somebody who doesn't know or is listening, what does the CEO or president of the Fremont Street Experience actually do? And what prepared you prior to this? Obviously, you mentioned the Mirage, but prior to that, what were you doing that prepared you for that role?
Yeah, this is a unique role in a lot of ways. We are a public street, managed privately. It has entertainment of 3 concert stages. I came from a television network that focused on music and sports. But we also have
Which
security.
network was that?
This was HDNet and Access TV. So I worked there for 13 years right before this job. And again, a little bit different, I don't want to digress, but with WrestleMania coming to town, I worked in MMA and pro wrestling primarily for 13 years, putting on thousands of MMA and pro wrestling television shows for HDNet and Access TV.
By the way, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but Gary over here thinks that WrestleMania is going to be bigger than Super Bowl was last year for the city. I disagree.
In what regard?
Oh, just the amount of people that'll come to town. Maybe not the revenue
Yeah.
per se,
Yeah.
but the amount of, because you're going to have 2 separate nights. And from what we've seen, a lot of people
4
aren't
nights.
going. Yeah, but I'm saying 2 nights at Elite.
Yeah.
But people aren't going to both nights. Some people are, but you got people that are coming in for one single night and then people that are coming in for another single night.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I do know a lot about this one. So you do have SmackDown on Friday night at T-Mobile. You also have their Hall of Fame ceremony that night. You Saturday, to your point, you have this NXT show in the morning, which is their development league that'll be at T-Mobile and a sellout. Then you have WrestleMania later in the day. You have WrestleMania the next day. You have Monday Night Raw the next day at T-Mobile. The one thing, though, the 60,000 they're going to do at Allegiant, it'll be about 90% same people both days at Allegiant. People don't come for one day. They will. If you're a wrestling fan, and we dealt with them,
You go to every.
you're going to both those WrestleMania days. You're not coming to Vegas to only go to the one night, and you're not going to miss the big match because they actually don't.
Who is the
tell
big
you.
match?
It's too expensive.
Yeah, the big
That's
match.
the problem right now.
Yeah, it's
Expensive.
and to his point as well, it's John Cena who turned a heel in pro wrestling terminology. So John Cena turned bad, and for those who know, John Cena is going to face Cody Rhodes in a main event. And then there's CM Punk out there who we have his walkout song band playing on Fremont Street. It's called The Cult of Personality by Living Color.
Is Jake the Snake not fighting?
Jake the
No.
Jake the Snake, yeah.
He'll be at our viewing party.
There
Yeah.
you go. But yeah, so again, I do think WrestleMania will be huge. And I think the reason I believe LVCBA gave them $5 million to come here for that weekend, it's Easter weekend. And Easter weekend is atrocious, typically in Vegas. Now you have sellout events on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And you'll have wrestling fans everywhere. You have higher room rates and everything else. So the economic impact's going to be gigantic.
By the way,
Whereas
that's genius. That's genius. 'Cause
Yeah.
he's been saying, why did they choose Easter? Why did they choose Easter? Well, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And credit to the LVCVA because we
Yeah.
give them shit for F1.
Yeah.
We can say, hey, great job. That is really
This is
smart
huge.
for Easter.
But traditionally, WrestleMania has been this upcoming weekend.
Yeah,
It's never
not
been
Easter.
this late in April, but since
It sounds like they did
They
that
did that on
intentionally.
purpose. It was an ask by the LVC. Well, it was an ask to put it that weekend
Yeah.
because that's where we could give them money as a city to say you would make a huge impact. Whereas the argument on Super Bowl would be Super Bowl's huge to begin with. Having Super Bowl in the city, I don't know how much economic impact it was for the Plaza to have Super Bowl here versus a non-Super Bowl. There were some arguments they did better when Super Bowl wasn't here because people, are afraid to come and the pricing's high and all those other pieces and the gamblers don't come.
Right,
So,
right.
so I do think WrestleMania is a huge impact to your point on a weekend that would otherwise be awful.
Right.
And we're trying to lean into it as much as we can. And I'm trying to work on some pieces behind the scenes to get wrestlers to come down to Fremont Street and do different pieces because I do think those fans are some of the best fans on earth. Their production is some of the best production on earth. And now they're a company combined with TKO, with UFC here in town and have some of the same overlap of people. So again, I think it's an exciting time for Las Vegas.
It's going to be big. But back to the job. So you...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went all around the question.
No, that's
so what
good.
prepared me for this job? The reality, this job has so many pieces. I think my hospitality background early in my career was a big foundation. I went to a hotel school undergrad, working in hospitality. I worked running sales and marketing for Cox Communications in Las Vegas for 4 years, really understanding how to market, understanding tourism, understanding hospitality. I knew one of the casino owners before I started. But again, I don't know that anything could quite prepare you in some ways for, like you said, early on when I took the job, there was a lot of chaos. It was the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. The previous CEO and I overlapped for a day and a quarter. So I always laugh
who was that?
it was Patrick
Hughes. Yep.
So, prior to me, I came in, I was with him for one day, and the next day he goes, all right, if you need anything. And again, he was gone. And I have not heard from Patrick.
That day?
Yeah, I don't think so. And so I kind of laugh when we have some transitions on our team where it's like, I had an admin once and it was like, well, there's no, she's only going to be here for a week of, transition. I'm like, well, at the CEO level, we had a day. So, so I didn't have a lot of training. I kind of got into it and that probably was the best thing. The reality, I am a believer. My career did not have a straight line path in any way whatsoever. I mean, I was running pro wrestling, mixed martial arts, and running Fremont Street. I ran sales and marketing for Cox. I've dealt blackjack, baccarat. I was at bought stocks and bonds. You know, I do think if you're passionate and think you can learn things, you can.
Yeah.
I did have a stint in my career where I worked for Deloitte Consulting at a business school, and one of the things that taught me, problems in business are very similar. It doesn't matter. There's usually revenue and there's expense, and you have people. And if you're good in managing and leading people, those other things usually fall in line if you have a financial sense. So I've been fortunate. This job, I mean, I would say the number one thing, we've changed the culture at Fremont Street a lot in the last 5 years. You know, we don't lobby for best place to work awards or other things like that, and maybe we should, but our jobs are hard. The jobs at Fremont Street are tough, but I am extremely proud of the culture we've built over the last 5 years. People are so much happier. Our turnover is probably down at least 60% from where it was. We have many more employee appreciation events and people that just seem happy and don't leave. And that makes me happy because that means we're doing something right.
What's next for what's the next 5 years of Fremont Street Experience look like?
The next 5 years, I would say, number one, left meetings yesterday where we're kind of thinking of new ways to use the Canopy. I think on the one hand, we have Viva Vision shows and different entertainment, but I think you'll see new and experimental ways to use the Canopy that are more interactive versus just a Viva Vision show or just some moving objects that interact with the audience a bit more. I'm just reminded of when I was at Treasure Island back in the day. You went down the escalator and a pirate used to yell at you like, "Ahoy, matey," and then like you in the green shirt, and it creeped everybody out. So it won't be quite there, but we're going to try different things that really change a little bit of the entertainment aspect up there. Number two, we've had a lot of DJs and a lot of things on this dancing DJs, and we're kind of transitioning a little from that to making the stages a little more interactive and things we could do going forward. I think you're going to see so much more on the public safety side of us being far more present and working with Metro and marshals and our people again and very visible on the street because, again, nothing happens in tourism without public safety. So I think that part is a big part of it. And then, like I said, I'd like to see a little bit more cooperation. We have this thing called the Neon City Festival that Jonathan is a part of, and seeing the ability of bringing downtown partners across the board to come together to drive tourism. That was F1 weekend, but there might be bigger opportunities. Jonathan talks of the fireworks, and again, I'm a full disclosure. Early on when Jonathan was like, "Hey, I want to do fireworks, Andrew, will you promote it?" And I'm like, "Oh crap, will my board be okay with that?" And I didn't know. You know, there's a history over time of, do you support properties that aren't part of Fremont Street? And our board was like, "Yeah, definitely, let's do it." And I was happy to see it. And I think you'll see more of that in the years to come.
Well, thank you for saying that. And by the way, you have a very amazing position, but challenged in the sense that you have a board with different perspectives, different history, and everyone has a different view maybe on where the street should go.
Yeah.
And so you have to navigate those waters and make sure everybody's on board and get everyone on the same page, which is probably one of your bigger challenges, if I'm guessing, of something that you have to do. But it is great to see them expand beyond that. I'm very proud of the relationship that I've built with each one of them in terms of having a relationship with some of the other property owners on Fremont Street. Because when I moved out here in 2007, there was already a bad history between the Plaza and the Las Vegas Club and the Fremont Street Experience, and it got progressively worse over the next 5 years when I was just on the real estate side, which culminated in a lawsuit, which ended very poorly. And then we sold the Las Vegas Club, and I had no history with the board. I never even got to come to a board meeting.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think I would have been great on the board.
It would have been fantastic. We would have liked it.
I would have loved to have been on the board and been a part of it, but I missed all of that with the previous owners who fell out with them. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets, actually, in downtown, is not having ever had the opportunity to work with the board and be a part of the Fremont Street, because we were always considered the outsiders. From when I arrived here, it was a prearranged issue, I guess would be the right way to call it. And it's a shame because it would have been great, but like you pointed out, Neon City, we all came together. I think there's other opportunities. Fireworks, not everyone, but most of them want to get on board and help, and it's good for everyone and helps add another element to downtown. And we want to be good neighbors as well in downtown. So I think it's great to hear that that's something that the board's talking about.
Yeah, and I think also we have had 25 years of mayors that were very strong, and I will say Mayor Berkeley is a big supporter of everything we're doing downtown as well. Again, I know how close you are with the Goodmans, and I love the Goodmans, and getting to know Shelley better every day as well. And I think her passion for downtown is evident, and wanting to make this street and the whole downtown area a place that's for everybody. I see that from her. And she has challenges at the city level too, right? And again, I think the one part is everybody's passionate about what they're doing and wanting to drive tourism and make it better. And you see all the investment. And again, I don't know if Derek led the charge or if you did, but having Circa go up, then you go, okay, Fremont just did a massive remodel of all their hotel rooms. And now Terry, you take a look at Four Queens and they're redoing all their rooms. And then Golden Nugget's going to probably do their rooms. And you're doing work up front. And everybody's upgrading and getting better and better to really make this a world-class destination.
Exactly right. And you mentioned the Goodmans, but you're coming to the Oscars dinner series next week.
I am.
So, well, as of the time of this recording, I don't know when this will come out, but looking forward to having you there, because those are historic nights where Oscar tells old Vegas stories, and it's pretty cool. So you'll enjoy it. As a student of Vegas, you'll appreciate that.
Yeah, I've been once before. I love anytime I can see Oscar. I was telling you, I said to them, hey, when can we get to dinner? You go, come to my series. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. And so
You'll
there
be
you
there.
go. So I said, I'll be there.
You want to wrap this up? You want to get...
Yeah, I guess, Oscars is starting to open behind us in case you hear the noise. And again,
that is
thank
a
you
good
so
point.
much for your time. But as we kind of wrap up, our question that we always ask, and as a listener of the podcast, I'm sure you know, but any life advice you'd love to give to our
career
listeners?
advice.
Yeah, career. Well, he's done so many careers, I don't even know where to focus on, so...
And again, I go to every, we have a new hire orientation that's going on today, and I went over there. I go to every class that joins Fremont Street. One thing I tell people that I think sometimes gets shortchanged in today's world with everything's going on is being nice to people. Nobody likes to fire somebody who's pleasant and nice. And to actually find people who are pleasant, that do their job, but actually are pleasant throughout a day, that goes a long way in life. And I think people underrate just being kind of a nice person doesn't really hurt, especially in a career where if you listen to people and if you treat people with respect. And listen, I walk up the street coming over here, which is why I was hot to begin with, and I don't have my suit jacket on, but it was 100, nearly 90 some odd degrees. But I bumped into our custodians, I bumped into our zipline operators, and you say hello to everybody. And we all started in the same place. We all do the same jobs. Mm-hmm. Those are the people you're meeting first every day at Fremont Street. And people aren't meeting Jonathan when they come to the plaza, and they're not meeting me. They're meeting frontline folks. And that's where I started. I assume that's where you started. And just being nice. And I think that helps a lot in moving up in this world. So that'd be my first piece of just try to be nice to people if you can. And that might go and help you in your career someday.
It's funny you say that. Someone was saying the other day that they want, everyone says they want their kid to be like an NFL player or a doctor or a lawyer. And the one lady was just like, I just want my kid to be a good person.
Yeah.
Just be a good person.
Yeah, I mean,
good
and
advice.
listen, Larry, if you talk to somebody who's interviewing for a job, and maybe it's just because of my background, I believe you can do any job. Mostly, I mean, listen, there's things of technical expertise you need in accounting. You need a CPA. You can't just be nice. It's not going to go well. But again, if you want to learn something new, the number of times people have asked me where I've offered to be, hey, if anything I could do, they rarely will call you, right, to take you up on it. And I'm willing, and I did breakfast for a long time where people could come. If you have any questions or want to learn something, at our company, I'm pretty open to you following anybody you want for a day to learn something new if that's in your interest field.
Yeah.
And so I do think that goes a long way. And if you want to try something, try it. I don't, failure happens sometimes. But again, I think nobody minds really failure when you tried hard and you're a good person and you actually wanted success.
And you learn.
That's correct.
You're doing an amazing job. Congratulations on, is it 5 years now?
Yeah, going on 5 years.
Congratulations on 5 years at Fremont Street. You're doing an amazing job. As you said, the numbers have never been better, but the culture, the community, you're really doing a great job. So thank you for your hard work in downtown Las Vegas, and appreciate all your insight that you've shared today.
Hey, thank you for having me, and let's not make it 5 years again.
Beautiful.
You a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.